And ladies and gentlemen, coaches and players, I'm your host, Rob Schreier, and welcome to Hardwood Heroes, your source for Tri-Valley Conference basketball. Down the stretch, we come inside the TVC, and Hardwood will be here every step of the way to put things in perspective. But one thing that doesn't need any discussion is Alexander's dominance in the TVC. The Spartans have downed all their league opponents in the first go-around, but Nelsonville-York has improved drastically since the two teams did battle. But Alexander was too much for the Buckeyes to handle, as the Spartans downed the Buckeyes 54-36. And for more on our game of the week, we're going to welcome Blake Brody to the desk, who was there at that game. Break it all down for us.
Hey, Alexander got the win Thursday night over a red-hot Nelsonville-York Lady Buckeyes team, but they were tested early. Nelsonville-York had an 8-point lead in the first quarter. Alexander came out a little flat, but give the Lady Spartans credit. They never got rattled despite the early deficit. They stuck with their game plan, and they wound up running away with it with a 18-point victory. Maddie Kuhn was at the game with me. Maddie, what did you think about the game Thursday night?
Well, not to take anything away from the Lady Buckeyes, but perhaps their strong start was due to the fact that Alexander may have underestimated them a little bit. And also, Maria Martinez was poised to go off in the first quarter, scoring 10 points, but she also accumulated 2 fouls, which forced her to sit the bench. And her impact on the game was clear because at the beginning of the second quarter, Alexander started off in a 5-0 run, and Nelsonville-York did not score for the final minutes of the second quarter.
Yeah, Maddie, Alexander's defense got better and better as the game went on, didn't you think?
Yes, definitely. And one thing that Coach Amanda Dalton said after the game was that since they play 2 games in 2 days, their legs might have gotten a little bit tired, and they also need to keep building up their confidence. They've come a long way since the beginning of the season, especially with the younger players. But you can tell, aside from the seniors and Kelly Cox, some of the younger players aren't as comfortable with handling the ball, and they're also not too good yet at moving away from the ball, especially with set plays, which could have led to open shots.
Yeah, Coach Guthrie said that a big thing that Nelsonville-York was doing early in the game is they had success getting the ball in the lane, and once Alexander, stopped that and imposed their fast break offense, then they kind of started to run away with it. They slowed the game down, which Guthrie thought was huge, and they wound up, like I said, running away with a 54-36 victory.
Absolutely, and another factor that was in it was Alexander they started hitting their shots, and you could see their main players coming out with Whitney Doherty and Kayla Radican. They just started hitting everything. And Nelsonville, they also had Chelsea Martin get into some foul trouble, and also Shelby True. So when they had their main players sitting on the bench, it really showed.
That it did.
Great stuff, guys. And with the Spartans taking down the Buckeyes, there are only a few more roadblocks between them and the perfect season in the TVC. Athens kept their momentum inside the league going with the win over Belpre via Elena Lyons' freakish 30-point effort, but Meigs is right behind them, and the Bulldogs right behind them on the Bulldogs as they made up with a win over Point Pleasant as they took a trip across the border into West Virginia. And Nelsonville-York, before their loss to Alexander, won 3 straight games this week and still have the ability to take down any team on any given night. But for more information, we just talked about Alexander, and they're rolling right now. But they're not a team that's going to scare you height-wise, but how do they make up for that?
Right, Alexander's not a team that exactly intimidates teams from the outside looking in, but they do play the scrappiest brand of basketball in the TVC-Ohio, and that makes up for their size disadvantage. They still find a way to get to every loose ball, it seems. They still out-rebound teams consistently, and that really makes up for their size differential. Plus, whenever you watch the Lady Spartans play, you always get the feeling that they want it more, and I think that's huge to their success.
Well, you mentioned scrappy. They're a team that just likes to get after it defensively.
Oh, absolutely. They play a ferocious brand of defense as well. That's in your face throughout the entire game. In conference play, they only give up 26 points a game, which is pretty remarkable, and that gives you a chance to win game in and game out. There are nights when the offense might not be there, the ball might not go in the bucket, but you can always control defense, and Alexander plays it better than anybody in the conference.
I mean, I've seen them firsthand. That defense is like a textbook definition of what you want a team to play. Thanks, Brake. And in the locker room after the game, there are coaches and players, at least once in their basketball careers, wondering what if. And at Hardwood, we are no different. So for the potential storylines that are too good to ignore, let's get hypothetical for just a minute, focusing on the TVC-Ohio. And we'll welcome back Maddie Kuhn, who's covering Nelsonville-York. And Maddie, we wonder if the Nelsonville-York Buckeyes were able to play like they have recently the entire season, what would that team be like?
Well, basically that game against Alexander could have been between the first and second ranked teams in the TVC-Ohio. And the main factor has been the return of Maria Martinez, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll mention later. She's been a big impact on offense and defense, and when she's on the court, you can tell the other girls improve their confidence. Players who don't normally shoot the ball start shooting it, perhaps knowing that she's down there to get the rebound. And also, the season has been bringing more experience to the younger players, which also brings more confidence. And I believe that the mental battle is half the part of getting wins. You could tell in their games against Athens and Trimble, they had a lot more heart than they did perhaps against Alexander, and that clearly meant the difference between a win and a loss.
And they're going to be a team to look down for in 2011 and 2012, as that team is very young, but still going to be dangerous in the remainder of this season. And for something TVC fans don't have to wonder about, and for all the latest TVC information, check out the rest of the Hardwood Heroes website at woub.org/heroes. Video recaps, up-to-the-minute scores, and our recently added mid-season Hero of the Year selections are available all right now. Also, email us a question or comment at heroes@woub.org. Your emails may be included in our show in the future, so give us a shout. But crossing the timeline now in the TVC-Hocking is shaping up to be a two-horse race, as Waterford and Eastern have solidified themselves on the top shelf of the conference. Waterford demolished Federal Hocking this week by assigning Kings 25 points, and the Wildcats are only a win over Eastern away from the league crown. Eastern picked up an impressive out-of-conference win against Athens and another one against Wahama, but we're going to bring it all back here to Federal Hocking and talk with Brad Appleton, who is covering the Lancers all year long. And Brad, why did the Lancer offense struggle against Waterford?
Well, Rob, this is a Lancer team who's averaged just about 48 points per game and were limited to only 32 against Waterford. They were unable to work the ball down low and had to settle for several outside shots, many of which weren't able to fall. Turnovers were also a huge problem for the Lancers, who had 27 compared to Waterford's 9, so it definitely hurt them in the end. But you know, Rob, whenever Shanda Kuckler's limited to just 16 points, it's obvious the other team's doing something right.
And what do they need to do after this loss to get back on track?
Well, talking with Coach Butcher after the loss, he said the number one thing his team needs to do is to refocus. They need to think about the upcoming tournament and try and win out the regular season games in order to keep that momentum going. And as I said before, turnovers have played a huge problem for the team all year, so Butcher's really stressing possession with his team. And with their next game coming on Tuesday, it's sure to be an interesting finish.
I mean, really, it matters, especially in the Hocking. Those last 4 games, you get momentum going into the tournament. That's really what's important when you come tournament time.